The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show. Glad you could make it tonight. We are going to do kind of a news roundup today. So I haven't done one of these in a while. Just a bunch of different topics. I don't know that there's a common theme. You guys can tell me if you think there's a common theme. But just kind of a news roundup. A lot going on in the news, actually. There was a ton of stuff going on. I figured I'd say a few minutes on a bunch of different things. Some of them I've listed in the title. Some of them are not in the title. We're going to try to cover them all. Wait a minute. Let me just lower my volume. I think the mic was a little hot there. Alejandrina, as she says, the goal today, as it is every day, is at least $400. So yesterday we missed that goal we did because she wasn't here. Alejandrina wasn't here. So I think we only did like 260, 270, something like that. So hopefully we can get to the $400 today. That is the challenge to you guys, and we'll be doing a $1,000 challenge probably not this coming week, the next week. We've got a supporter who's already done a $1,000 match. If he's committed to $1,000 a match, if you guys contribute $1,000, so we'll do that next week sometime. All right, I'm going to run down a few of these and comment on them. Feel free to start asking questions. Feel free to jump in with other news items you would like to discuss. But I've got 8 different news items that I have on the list. The review of Secretary, I just downloaded the movie, so I'm hoping to watch it on my flight tomorrow. I'm flying tomorrow to Austin, Texas. So a review should be over the weekend. So I think we'll have over the weekend. The dislike was actually there before I even started. So we've got riots in Minnesota. We're definitely going to get. Didn't you see on the title? It says more riots. I don't know anywhere else where there are more riots. Those are definitely in Minnesota. Let's see. Anything else logistic? I think we're good. All right. Let's start with quick rundown on international news, and then we're going to hit some of these other things. Actually, 2 of the items I have there already international news. Anyway, we're going to start with stuff that I'm not going to say a lot about. Starting with Israel. So remember yesterday I talked about it was probably Israel that used some kind of hack into the Iranian systems, shut down electricity to the main nuclear facility the Iranians have deep underground, and that probably did real damage to the centrifuges that are used in order to produce the uranium. Now pretty much everybody. Israel came close to admitting that it had done it. The Iranians are clearly blaming Israel. Now it's pretty much in the open. And I've even seen commentators make the comment that I made yesterday that part of the reason Israel did this now was to try to complicate the situation for the Americans because the Americans are basically starting to renegotiate with Iran and starting to talk about the New Deal. So this is a way to kind of get the Biden administration's creates a little bit of complexity, a little bit of angst within the Biden administration in dealing with the Iranians now. The Iranians are not happy. Nobody's happy, and this will delay anything that has to do with the nuclear deal. So, yeah, Israel's up to their espionage tricks, trying to do anything they can to delay the ability of the Iranians to produce nuclear weapons, or at least to show that they're committed to doing that, whether it's assassinating scientists or destroying the nuclear facilities that the Iranians are using. I was a little ahead of the news yesterday, so now it's pretty much everybody is talking about this. That's Israel, Iran. Let's move over to Ukraine. We talked about this again yesterday, but now it looks like the Russians have put 80,000 troops on the border with Ukraine. So I don't know if Putin it's springtime, so, nobody wants to go to war in that part of the world during winter. So maybe as the snow thaws and things get warmer, maybe Putin is really, working on preparing for war. We will see. Let's hope not. I like Ukraine. I've spoken there many times. Ukraine, Atlas Shrugged was the best-selling book in 2015, I think. The number one best-selling book in the entire country was Atlas Shrugged in Ukrainian. So I really hope that we don't see a war out there. Many people will die, and it's just horrific. War over what? What would be the purpose of it? But you never know with Putin. Putin must be feeling weak within Russia, and this is a way to kind of divert attention away from his own weakness and away from the economic problems that Russia has, and divert it away the attention to kind of a potential external threat. So I expect, we will see. I hope it doesn't come to war. I'm not exactly sure what is the point of flexing muscles. Maybe to test Biden, maybe to test the West. Hard to tell. Maybe it's a negotiating ploy. And he wants something in return for backing down. We're going to have to wait and see. All right, let's see. Ecuador. Ecuador just elected. Ecuador is expected to elect another socialist as president. That country's been heading towards socialism. I think the socialist was the favorite in the presidential election. Nope, they rejected a socialist. I'm not sure what the quality of the person who they did elect. He's identified as a conservative. I haven't had a chance to kind of dig into it, but election in Ecuador went against the socialists, and that is actually really good news. So that's excellent that a socialist takes a hit in Latin America. Jose says his mom is disappointed. Was your mom in Ecuador? Was she voting? Did she vote for the socialist? So that's Ecuador, Peru, right next to Ecuador. I've been to Ecuador. I gave speeches in Ecuador. I've been to Peru. Only gave one speech in Peru. Peru is one of my favorite. Somebody told me that you guys like to hear about restaurants, but maybe one of the best foodie cities in the world is Lima, Peru. It's got some of the highest ranked restaurants in the world. Certainly got the highest ranked restaurants in Latin America, and it's just spectacular. The food is truly unbelievable. And so I was in Lima a few years ago, gave a talk at the Montpellier Society meeting there. And I was on the same trip also in Ecuador and gave 2 or 3 talks at universities in a couple of cities in Ecuador. Also went up to Machu Picchu when I was in Peru. So it was a nice trip, although I got really, 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 really sick in Peru. So Peruvian election, first round, had 24 candidates. Since nobody got 50%, there'll be a runoff election between the 2 leading candidates. It looks like the candidate who got the most votes, this is the opposite of Ecuador, got 16% of the vote, over 16% of the vote, is a Marxist, a really, really, really bad Marxist. That is a little scary. The number 2, there's a race between Fujimori, the daughter of the former president of Peru, who's sitting in jail for corruption, and Hernando de Soto, who was my candidate, who's the free market economist. It looks like she might get more votes than de Soto, and it'll be her. She's relatively free market. She's not bad. But people hate her in Peru because they hate her because of her father. So he's not in jail for corruption. He's in jail because of the brutality which he used in order to suppress the Peruvian terrorists who fought against them. Now, I don't know enough about Peruvian history to be able to tell you if Fujimori was a good guy or a bad guy. I don't know. But the problem is that if Fujimori wins, if the daughter wins, she might lose to the Marxist. Not because of the ideas, but because people hate her and because people project the hatred of her father. So she might actually lose in a runoff. That's why I really, 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 really hope that De Soto wins. And De Soto is the best shot Peru has. And I really hope that he lands up winning. I think he has a better shot at beating the Marxist than Fujimori has. And Peru is a wonderful place. It's a beautiful place, amazing people, and as I said, one of the best foodie. Lima is one of the best foodie cities in the world. Peru generally has some of the best food in the world, and so I hope it doesn't fall to a Marxist candidates. We will see. So that's kind of a rundown of some of what's going on in the world, for what it's worth. And if you've got other ideas of what I could talk about, let me know, and I'll try to look it up and try to comment on it. I eat llama. They didn't serve llama. I'd eat llama. I ate horse in Mongolia. I mean, in Mongolia, that's what you eat. You eat horse. So I ate horse in Mongolia. I can't say it was particularly good. It wasn't bad. It was okay. I wouldn't eat horse again. But you have to try when you're in a country. You have to try these different things. So, Daniel just canceled me. Oh my God, he canceled me. I guess for eating horse. Was that the reason, Daniel? I'm obviously mortally offended some of you now. Anyway, I ate an ant in Brazil and in California, actually. In California, it was like a pile of ants, and it was an appetizer. You ate them like peanuts. So I'm not a big. No, I didn't think horse was that good, but Yasser thinks that horses are good. I wonder where Yasser lives that he eats horse. France, you go to the butcher in France. If you go to the butcher in France, they'll offer horse. So go figure. Go figure. All right, let's get to some of these topics that I was going to talk about. France, another international topic. We'll do France and China, then we'll get to riots and equity and infrastructure. Those two are a little related. France is banning flights. It's banning forever, not because of COVID. They're banning flights forever. If the flights are less, if you could take a train ride between the same two destinations that is 2.5 hours or less, you cannot fly. They're canceling the flight. They're banning planes from flying. And of course, people are very upset because the initial proposal was 4 hours. If you can take a train ride that is 4 hours, there shouldn't be any flights between these two destinations. So you might want to fly into Paris and go out to, Nice. Nice is probably more than 2.5 hours train. But whatever, you want to go to someplace near the French Alps, which is 2.5 hours away by drive, and you're jet lagged. Now you're going to have to get in a car and drive. No, you won't drive. You can take the train, but you have to get your bags, go to the train station, get on a train. I don't know if the train station's at the airport. Probably not. You have to switch trains once you get into Paris and then take the train because there are not going to be any connecting flights. And it turns out, as I was reading about this, that there is a whole movement around Europe to ban short flights, to ban connecting flights. You have to use the train. Now, why? What is it about flying that is so offensive? Well, all you have to do is ask Greta, right? That little girl from, where's she from? Germany? Denmark? Can't remember where she's from. All you have to ask is Greta. Greta, you remember Greta came to the United States and she wouldn't fly. Right? She wouldn't fly because, jet fuel, it turns out, jet fuel is a major pollutant. It is a major source of CO2, and therefore it is a major source of climate change. And therefore it is damn wrong to fly because you're destroying the planet. Now, most people are not like Greta, they don't have that kind of, quote, integrity. So for most people, we can't trust them to make the kind of decisions. Thank you. She's from Sweden. She's from Sweden. I should have known she was from Sweden. Anyway, she's from Sweden. She could be German, though. Give me a break, right? She could be. Her and Hans, what was his name? Hans, the Great Reset Hans guy. Flying is disaster for climate change, we're told. And therefore, Europe is shutting down flights. Somebody said, this is like Atlas Shrugged. Yes, this is very much like Atlas Shrugged. Let's just shut down human life. Let's slowly start erasing human life. Let's slowly start shutting down, making it inconvenient, making travel as difficult and inconvenient as possible. Right? Klaus Schwab, with that heavy German accent, he was the perfect representative for the Kantian Great Reset, right? And this is, of course, your duty is not to travel because travel creates CO2. We are going to force you not to travel. Now, it turns out I read another article that said that like 50% of all the carbons emitted by airplanes are really caused by a small number of flyers. Me, I'm one of them, who fly X 100,000 miles a year. They're responsible, like 50% of all the because they fly so much. They're the ones, and they do international flights, and they're the ones responsible. Right? So we're supposed to stop traveling. We're supposed to stay home. This fits with the Great Reset, right? It fits with COVID. It fits with lockdowns. It fits with, remember I did that show on why can't people just settle for a normal life? Yeah, why can't you just settle for a normal life? Just stay home, stay local, go to the grocery store, go for a walk around in the park. Why do you have to travel? Why do you have to go to exotic places or different places or new places or beautiful places? I'm sure you can find beautiful things in your local backyard. Europe didn't get bolder on climate because of Biden. Europe got bolder over climate because of COVID. What they discovered in COVID is they could shut down their entire population and nobody would say a word. Nobody would say a word. So it's climate change that has given them the courage to be more aggressive in their climate fascism. European productivity is not incredibly high. It's significantly worker productivity in places like France and Italy is below the United States. In Germany, it's about the same as the United States. I did a whole show on this with graphs and everything. You can look it up. Grumpy Economist has a whole article about this. And factor productivity, if you add factor productivity to worker productivity, European countries all drop off dramatically as compared to the United States in terms of productivity. Look it up this is a comment somebody made that European productivity is higher than the U.S. It's just not true. Look it up on John Cochran's blog, The Grumpy Economist. He has a whole article with graphs, with numbers that show it. No, I mean, they are emboldened now by the fact that their populations have just been willing to submit. Well, the next big thing to submit to is use a train. Don't use an airplane. And you know, when they run out of electricity and when they're struggling to produce enough electricity to run those trains, because the trains are obviously electric trains, they wouldn't be coal trains or diesel trains, right? They'd be electric trains. When they run out of electricity, they'll tell you they won't tell you to drive your car, because if they run out of electricity, your electric car won't work, and you can't use a gas-guzzling, ordinary car, because that's a gas-guzzling ordinary car. So what will they tell you? Walk. Ride your horse. This is how we regress backwards. I mean, think about it. If they want to convert all the cars to electric cars, where's the electricity going to come from? Solar and wind? Really? I mean, unless we go full-on nuclear power, the move away from fossil fuels means a move away from automobiles. There is no alternative. So Europe is shutting down flights. I mean, that's one thing I don't think the American people would tolerate yet. Europeans are willing to tolerate much more than Americans. Plus, the Europeans have better railroads, let's admit it. But even granted that, Europeans are much more willing to accept these kind of things than Americans. Although, given the American response to shutdowns, it could very well be that we move towards greater and greater and greater and greater controls at a faster and faster rate. Again, emboldened by COVID. All right, just a reminder to everybody to like the show before you leave. We're at 126 watching, 56 likes. We could easily be at 100 if you like the show, of course. And don't forget, we're targeting 400. I don't know where Alejandrina went. Is Alejandrina still here? Or did she disappear on me? But it would be good to give us a running total so we know where we are relative to goal. She was here in the beginning. She usually sticks around. She's Action Jackson was here before. That's pretty unusual. So maybe one of them is around and they can oh, there she is. She's on. So just give us a running total so we can easily motivate people around a particular number. It's always, oh, she's eating while listening to the show. All right, so you can finish chewing and then give us a total of what's been done. She took the money and ran, Richard said. All right. No. Alejandrina is not taking the money and running. Let's see. So it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary that the complaint in Europe about these short flights is that too many of them are being left. That is, we need actually to impose it on 4-hour train rides, not on 2.5 hours for train rides. All right, guys, we're 25% there, right? I'm getting a lot of questions at $5. I know some of you can't do more than $5, but those of you can, make it 10, or ideally make it 20, and then we can get there very quickly, right? We can get to the 400 very quickly, and then I'll stop bugging you. Maybe I'll stop bugging you. I'm not sure what Adrina's eating, given she's in Venezuela. So you're gonna have to tell us what you're eating, Alejandrina. Everybody is very curious now. I don't think she's eating horse. I doubt that. Goat, maybe. Sheep, maybe. Horse, no. All right, that is France, but all over Europe they're talking about this. Oh, she's eating arepas. Oh God, Shizipi arepas. Is it like coconut? I love arepas. They have good arepas here in Puerto Rico. All right, let's. People don't like it when I get distracted away from topic. So let's get back on topic. So Europe is a challenge, right? Let's see. Chinese vaccines. I don't know if you saw this story, but a Chinese official. This is for all of you, and I know there's some of you out there, and I know that many of you listen, who really petrified of China and think that China is going to take over the world. It's got superior technology. It's got the government investing in technology. It's got this massive government superiority in terms of technology, and they're going to kick America's butt. That's what so many of you are thinking. That's what I know a lot of conservatives are thinking. That's what a lot of people on the left are thinking. That's what is on. I see it all the time on the talk shows, right? China is just, they're smart, they're investing in technology, their companies are way ahead of us, they're beating us, they're much better than us. And then the Chinese official today, and imagine this is Chinese official, actually admitted, I think it was yesterday, that the Chinese vaccine, 4 of them, they have 4 different vaccines. All 4 of them are not very effective. Effective rates of about 50%, as compared to Pfizer and Moderna at 90+%, as compared to J&J, which is at 80-something%, as compared to AstraZeneca, which is also high 70s, 80%. So way ahead of the pathetic 50% that the Chinese vaccine is generating. Maybe their technology is not that good. Maybe there's a correlation between freedom of speech, between attitudes, and actual technological success. Maybe technological success, like Ayn Rand told us decades ago, requires intellectual freedom, requires the freedom to think new thoughts, to have plans, and then to actually execute on those plans, to fail, to accept failure, to rise up from it, to try again, and to keep working through this until you get a proper result. Versus, maybe the Chinese approach, which is more focused on copying than it is about innovation, because failure is not quite viewed in the same way in unfree countries. Real important to innovation, progress, and success is a proper attitude towards failure. And of course, once you start letting people thinking and coming up with all kinds of ideas and trying them and failing and maybe succeeding next time, and they can have all kinds of ideas about liberty and about freedom, about speech and about politics and about everything else, and that's not good. We don't want them to have those ideas. So authoritarian regimes don't like thinkers. They don't like innovation. They like the result of innovation. What they don't like is the process that innovation requires, the process, the freedom that innovation requires. So I've never been particularly worried about China, because the only way China can become super successful is if it also becomes freer at the same time. And if it becomes freer at the same time, it's great that it's super successful. And if it becomes more authoritarian, then it's going to become less rich. And then I'm not worried about that either. Important John says, China could destroy the U.S. 10 times over with nukes. Just untrue. Just untrue. Most of those nukes would make it to the U.S. They'd be eliminated in flight. The capacities that the Chinese and the Russians do not have of missile defense systems. And the United States missiles are more accurate, they're more likely to reach their targets, and they are more devastating. just study up on it. You know, the Chinese cannot match American technology, military technology. They don't even come close at this point. Their airplanes don't come close. Their battleships and their aircraft carriers don't come close. And their cruise missiles, forget it. So no, I don't believe that. Don't believe that. The United States is the only country other than Israel that has effective, useful, tested missile defense systems. They're not perfect, so you don't want to get into a position where they're launching a bunch of nukes at you because some of them might get through. But to think that China's in a better position than the United States, you just are not right. Just not right. Right. All right. Let's see. All right, I'll have Venus explaining what arepas are to some of my listeners and explaining how they're being made in Venezuela when there's not a lot of food available and not a lot of resources to make food available. So it's not easy. It's not easy. All right, so Chinese vaccines, not impressive. Chinese tech, I mean, there's some tech that's impressive, but the vaccines, not impressed at all. Not impressed at all. All right, let's take a look here at the riots that we're seeing in Minnesota. So I don't know how much you read about the story. Another shot another black man. And as a consequence, there are riots. People are burning their neighborhood down. I mean, because it makes complete sense that you're aggravated by a massive injustice. And so what you do in terms of express your aggravation over this massive injustice is to burn down your own neighborhood and to destroy property in your own neighborhood of your friends and neighbors. That's exactly what any rational person would do when they're angry. And don't tell me that it's insulting to them to say they're irrational, because they're clearly irrational. It's never rational to respond to an injustice going and burning and destroying cars and burning and destroying buildings. That is completely irrational. And the irrational is the immoral. And it's stupid. And it gains nothing. Yeah, it gains attention. It gains attention. What does that attention buy you? It gains attention to your immoral, barbaric actions. Stop burning stuff down. Stop rioting. You want to demonstrate? Go demonstrate in front of the police. They're the ones who did this, not your neighbors, not business owners. No, it is not rational. Now, if you understand what rational actually means, it is irrational, and the goal is irrational. So, what happened? It turns out that the police stopped this automobile. I think they got the name of the driver, and it turns out that there was a warrant out for his arrest. The driver tried to run away. I guess one of the policemen shot at the car, injured the passenger. Ultimately, the car hit a pole or something. Either was stopped, or I don't know if it hit a pole, but it was stopped. The guy got out of the car and was arguing, I guess, with the police. Then went back to get in the car, and at this point, the police aimed a gun at him and shot him. He was trying to escape arrest. What makes this ludicrous, the whole thing ludicrous, and an illustration of stuff that I've talked about last year after the George Floyd thing, is that the cop supposedly tried to shoot him with a taser and drew her gun instead of a taser. The other cop is saying, tase him, and she pulls the trigger thinking she's tasing the guy and shoots him dead. Now that's insane. How does a policeman confuse a handgun with a taser? Now I know. Under a lot of stress, a violent situation, although as far as I know, the guy wasn't violent, he was trying to run away. But a lot of stress, very difficult situation, granted. You don't shoot somebody dead. And she didn't mean to shoot him dead. And this goes back to what I've been saying since George Floyd. One of the main problems I see, and when you read about all these cases over and over again, you read about them for years now, it seems like at least a certain percentage of police are unbelievably badly trained. This is bad training. And part of training is to train them under stress, put them in a stressful situation, and then force them to draw and repeat and repeat and repeat. These people, these cops, are carrying guns. That gun could be pointed at you one day because it was a mistake. People who carry guns, I take guns as being something really serious, should be trained. Police officers should be massively trained. I am fine if you want to raise my taxes. I mean, I'd rather it be voluntary, but if you raise my taxes, to train policemen better, I would feel so much more secure. I've said this before. Train them in martial arts. Police should know martial art. They should know how to subdue a person easily and quickly and effectively without resorting to mortal force. And they should be able to use a gun effectively. And they should be able to know in a grip in the hand, just by the weight of the thing, the difference between a gun and a taser. It can't be that they feel the same. And they should know where the gun is and where the taser is and draw the one and not the other. All these things are kind of self-evident. These things are involved in training. People with guns should be trained. Think about, and I've used this example in the past. Think about the kind of training the military goes through in basic training and then throughout a soldier's career. Why is a policeman different? Because they have unions, I guess. Why aren't the policemen have this incredibly intense period of training and then constantly do training on the job? Constantly have to go away for a week here, a week there to do more training and more training, just like a military. And when they reach a certain age and they can't use martial arts and they can't be trained, they should retire to a desk job. You shouldn't have policemen who are old, define old, I guess, but who are old and out of shape, or out of shape. I don't get this obese policeman. Policemen on the beat should not be obese. How are you going to subdue a criminal? They should be fit and strong and able and in great shape. And always in the movies, the policeman is chasing the bad guy, and the bad guy outruns him, and the police is all out of breath, can barely breathe, because he's been smoking, eating donuts, and drinking coffee and Coke, whatever, right? It's absurd. You gotta train. I have no problem with women being police officers. I know women who could beat any one of you guys up, who could take you down. And if they learned Krav Maga, or if they learned Jiu-Jitsu, or if they learned Aikido, they could take any criminal down. It's not an issue of male or female. It's an issue of training. And ongoing training. And ongoing fitness. And hey, if you don't pass the fitness test, I don't care how long you've been a policeman, you're not going out on the beat. If you don't take care of yourself, you lose your job. Anyway, that's my view with regard to police. The rioting is insane. It just feeds the worst elements. It is kind of the nihilism. And I know, and I appreciate this. I think a lot of it is fueled by frustration, by a sense of nobody's listening and nobody cares. And that is reinforced by the intellectuals and the leaders of the black community, primarily black community, I think, is rioting right now. It's reinforced by them. Instead of giving these communities, these individuals, the tools to cope, to deal, to improve their lives, to move on, to get out of these neighborhoods, to make more money, to live a proper human life, instead of that, the leaders want them to become more dependent. The leaders want them to become bigger victims. The leaders want to keep them as victims so they can continue to exploit them, as leaders often do. Instead of emboldening them, providing them with the tools to escape this frustrating situation they're in, which is a situation of poverty where they expect, because, and to a large extent, again, I don't blame many of these people. I blame their leaders because they've been told to expect other people to solve their problems, to expect the goodies to come any day now. They've been told that if they play the victim card, they will win. That it's all about victimhood. That is the standard by which we live. This is altruism. This is the code that permeates our society. Everybody's competing on who can be the bigger victim. And again, that is the fault of the critical race theory monsters at the universities who are teaching this real crap, to view everything through the eyes of race. And then the result is this incredible rise of racism on the left, which leads or plays off of the rise of racism on the right, and now they're just competing. Now they're just competing. And it's tragic because there's no way out of this on these standards, on the standard of altruism, on the standard of race. Is no way out. The victims will just become bigger victims. The poor will just become poorer. The solution is ambition, individual ambition. The solution is work. The solution is proper education. And again, it's hard to blame the victim. They went to public schools after all. In the name of education, they got rot. So the people to blame here are the people who argue for public education, for more money to public education, instead of arguing for education saving accounts, or even vouchers, or even what do you call the schools that are still owned by the state but are run independently, charter schools. Give people options, particularly the poorest people. Give them options. Give them a way out of the situation that they're in. Instead, what does our intellectual leadership do? They encourage them to go and riot and burn down their own homes, their own neighborhoods, their own cars. That is going to help whom? That is going to benefit whom? Nobody. It's very depressing to see. It's very depressing to see. And you know, it's depressing to see because there are real options here. There are real alternatives. And there are real issues. There are real problems. Problems of lack of police training, police brutality, police incompetence that should be addressed. But instead, it becomes about riots. So, remind you, I was talking to a friend of mine who runs the best school in Colorado. Best school in Colorado. Former Congressman Schaefer, and he runs the best school in Colorado. It's a charter school. Best grades. He's got 1,200 kids in the school, 1,500 on a wait list, but it's a charter school. So it's free. And he's starting a private school now. It's a Catholic private school, you know. He's Catholic, unfortunately. But he's a really good guy. And he's starting in this Catholic school that's basically going to have almost the same curriculum as the charter school, but just it's also going to have some religious studies associated with it. But now the parents who go to this Catholic school are going to have to pay a fortune. And the charter school, which teaches a very similar curriculum, is free. That's the insanity that you get when you have government-funded education. Well, government-controlled education. Actually, if the government only funded education, it wouldn't be true. Catholics are good people? Really? When did that happen? When did Catholics become good people? There are a few Catholics that are good people, but I wouldn't make it a generalization like that. Many Catholics are very bad people. And indeed, most of the philosophically, ideologically, politically right now, almost all of the nationalist, central planning, conservative movement is Catholic, and it's really bad. But the whole religion is really bad. I mean, Catholic guilt, Catholic, yeah, it's not a good religion. I don't know what is a good religion, but Catholicism is at least not a good one. But as I said, there are good people who are Catholic, just like there are good people with almost every religion. Yes, they're good. So some Catholics that, in spite of their religion, are good. There's still a conversation on my chat about arepas. That's how, that's how Alejandrina sets the terms of the discussion. Not me. They're not debating what I'm saying. They're debating what Alejandrina says. That's what's important. Yeah, it's $500 per movie that I will review. I'm going to review The Secretary soon. It's $1,000 if you want me to talk about a topic of your choosing. Just let me know what that topic is, and we will get it up, and we will do it. All right, let's see. No, don't stop, Alejandrina. You're entertaining my guests. It's good. It's excellent. All right, we still have like $220 to raise to get to the 400, so we're almost halfway there. I think the only way to get there is a few of you have to put in like $100 questions, because we've already got a lot of questions, but most of them at the $5 level, and that's fine. You can continue asking those questions, but please, if there's any of you who can afford to ask questions at the $20 level, the $50 level, $100 level, we'll get to the 400 much faster if you do. All right. Last topic before I get to the Super Chat questions. Let me just see if there's anything. All right. Okay, so who wrote this? Sorry. No, he says, what's it? Let me see if I can find who wrote. I don't know who wrote this. Sorry. Listening while sick as a dog in Motown. Not COVID symptom, just bad juju. It still could be COVID, by the way. Send healing vibes sent. And thank you as always for good shows recently. You're the man. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Let's see if there's anything else related to what we've just talked about. Police won't need. Yeah, police don't need to be constantly trained currently. They should be much like soldiers. Unfortunately, there's also a lack of competent personnel currently, not only because of the George Floyd stuff, but culturally as well. I think that's right. But they need some training. First of all, they need to be reminded of weapons training, because a lot of what happens in an emergency is instinctual. To build those, I mean, instinctual means really fast, right? Automatic, not instinctual, automatized. To build and to maintain that automation, you have to drill it. You have to drill it. So they need, at least periodically, to go through the drills. They don't have to be soldiers because they're not engaged in combat, but they are engaged in stressful situations that require them to be in good physical shape and sharp mentally and be able to deal with the situation. You don't shoot a gun when you think you're shooting a taser. It's just mind-boggling that stuff happens. And it's scary because any one of us could be on the other side of that. Now, generally, if you're stopped by police, behave yourself, don't resist, don't make suspicious movements. But still, it's a little scary to be stopped by police when you think about how incompetent they actually are. All right. See, Alan is complaining. You shouldn't complain like this. Alhendrina is gonna be upset. He says, "What the heck is this? An objectivist chat or objectivist cooking show?" I wish it was an objectivist cooking show. I think we'd get a lot more value from the chat aspect of the show if there were actually recipes involved and actually a real cooking show. Then we'd all be clearly better off, and you'd be living in a win-win situation. As it is, I'm not so sure about the chat. Right? Okay, last topic I had is this op-ed that I came across in Newsweek. Newsweek has become kind of a right, kind of conservative magazine, but this op-ed is certainly not coming from there. This is the title of the op-ed. Our infrastructure is racist. Biden's plan seeks justice. Did you know the infrastructure was racist? I didn't know inanimate objects could be racists. But I get if you can launch a war against inanimate objects, like the war on drugs, you can have inanimate objects be racist as well. So we've elevated inanimate objects to a very high place in our culture. Iran cooks an Arepa fund. I don't even know what that means. But we are at exactly $200. So $200 to go, guys. All right, let's see. So here's the argument, right? We need this infrastructure bill that Biden has passed. Not so much because our infrastructure is crumbling, which, by the way, it's not. It's actually in fairly good shape. But because it'll bring about equity. And indeed, the author points out, authors point out, oh, the author is a U.S. congressman. Oh, God, I should have noticed that. A U.S. congressman. As the author points out, the Biden plan illustrates how we can do equity-based planning. And equity is all over this piece. Equity is the catchphrase of the left right now. It used to be equality. It used to be social justice. Now it's equity. Equity meaning justice. Not equality, not treating people the same. Treating some people more because that's what justice demands. To get them to be equal. It's not AOC, it's Yvette D. Clarke and Michael Schenck, U.S. Congresswoman and the Communications Director of Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance. There's something credible. The Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance. I know carbon neutral cities. It's called non-existing cities or cities with no human beings. Yeah, equity equals fairness, which equals justice. But not their equity. Their equity is unfair and unjust. But they're trying. See, I've told you from the beginning, the left always go for the moral argument. The right always goes, but how are we going to pay for it? Well, but if it's the right thing to do, you'll find a way to pay for it. I think if I did a cooking show, you guys would increase your support, right? Well, not really. Not if you saw the kind of food, the quality of the food that I produced. Everything would plummet. So here's the article. It quote, equitable distributed investments, how we begin to remedy the wrongs of a structurally racist transportation and housing system, reconstruct a more just urban environment, and improve the health and economic well-being of those who are being systematically disadvantaged by our past and current investments and programs. So let's look at some equity-centric expenditures. What do those look like? Equity-centric. So, for example, there's 115 billion with a B, focused on cutting emissions and reducing congestion. Well, wait a minute. Why is cutting emissions and reducing congestion an issue of racial equity? Are only minorities stuck in traffic? God, not if you live in LA. Everybody's stuck in traffic. Well, here it turns out they've got an explanation. Black neighborhoods are 79% more likely than white neighborhoods to be exposed to industrial pollution, often from oil and gas refineries and petrochemical plants. Maybe that's because black communities tend to be poorer, and poor people tend to live in cheaper housing, and cheaper housing tends to be in less desirable places in a city, closer to where there's actual industrial activity. I guess the solution to that is to stop industry, to stop industrializing. Indeed, if we stop industrializing, they'll also probably lose their jobs. They'll just get poorer, but hell, who cares? They'll be breathing good air. Insanity. Black and Hispanic communities bear the disproportionate burden from air pollution generated by white Americans. Is that right? Do white Americans actually produce more air pollution than others? I mean, is this measured? Is this scientific? Leading disproportionate rates of asthma, cardiovascular disease, and premature death. I'm sure the cardiovascular disease has nothing to do with diet, has nothing to do with the obesity rates in some of these communities, none of that. You're not allowed to say what I just said. I mean, it's... But notice, everything today, even infrastructure, even pollution, is now viewed through racial lenses. It's hard not to be a racist when everything from left and right, Tucker Carlson to AOC to these Congress people, everything is now all about race, 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 race. That's all anybody wants to talk about. It's all anybody uses to explain things. So they continue by cutting emissions and reducing congestion, which the plan does. Yeah, right. I'd love to see 115 billion actually reduce congestion. I mean, the only way you do that is by banning automobiles in Los Angeles. How are you going to reduce congestion in Los Angeles through through Biden's infrastructure program? It's complete BS. And it'll take, imagine if they widen the highways, which we're not proposing. That would take decades, or at least years. And in the meantime, a lot of people's lives will be much tougher. Anyway, which this plan does, we begin to make neighborhoods healthier for all Americans and start chipping away at the disproportionate energy and pollution burden faced by communities of color. The real question is, and this is the question that has to be asked, is why are communities of color, as they define them, and again, the whole way of looking at this is a racist way of looking at it. Why are they poorer? Why are they living in these kind of communities? Now, some of it, I will grant, is a consequence of historic discrimination, of slavery, Jim Crow, redlining all over the United States. Clearly, all of those policies, which ended, by the way, about 50 plus years ago, all of those policies reduced the wealth of minority households and the wealth that was transferred from generation to generation. Action Jackson today is using all the money I pay him, he's using to return it to me through Super Chat. I mean, I'm game for it. Money is money. But the whole idea is you guys are supposed to be asking the Super Chat questions. Wait, I don't think I copied this one. Let's see. And he knows firsthand that the $20 questions will actually get answered. If you guys ask $20 questions, your questions will be answered. You'll get good answers. I can't guarantee the quality of the answers. No, I'm kidding. Nobody wants to talk about why they're still poor. Some of it is a consequence of the history, but some of it is a consequence of culture. And culture is a consequence of the intellectuals, of the ideas, of the teachers, of the leadership, of what they are being taught, what they're told their priorities. Why is it that since the war on poverty, there are still just as many poor as they were before? Maybe somebody should consider, maybe the war of poverty is not allowing anybody out of poverty. Maybe the war of poverty actually makes the situation worse. Maybe. Given that it's not helping, given that now we're blaming infrastructure, and we think infrastructure is the solution, maybe we should look at the war on poverty. Only way to get people properly out of poverty is through jobs and wealth creation. The only way to get people healthier and better and higher self-esteem and higher quality of life and just to be happy is for them to become productive and to embrace their job and to believe in their future and to believe in their own happiness and their own success and to believe in the system. But you see, all the forces out there, all the cultural forces out there, undermining any kind of trust in the system. This system is rigged. This system is racist, systemically racist. The system is against you. Well, then they riot and they burn stuff and they stay poor. And they have pollution. A second big equity boost, the authors write, is $160 billion, that is with a B again, all these numbers are billions. Nobody talks about millions anymore. Millions is boring. You got to talk about billions. A second big equity boost, totaling $160 billion, to improve and expand intercity rail and bus lines throughout America's urban areas, is again a critical investment in helping connect communities of color and low-income communities to places of employment, shopping, public parks, and everything. See, I would think that what you would actually want is for them to get rich enough so they could buy automobiles, because this is not a climate change argument. This is a getting to work argument. So they could buy automobiles, and then all we'd have to do is expand the highways, and we'd be cool. But no, you see, they don't want them to actually get richer. They don't want them to live a better life. They don't want them to actually succeed in life. They want them for the rest of their life to take the bus. I took the bus everywhere when I was a kid. Our family only had one car. I had to go places. Since I was probably 10. Yeah, 10, 9, 10. I went everywhere by bus. I walked to school, walked back from school, but anywhere further than school was a bus. But, part of the thing was my sisters never took the bus because my parents then had 2 cars and I could drive them around. But it spoiled them. But the point is, as you accumulate wealth, you don't take the bus. You drive. Driving gives you more control. You spend less time waiting. You get to spend more time at work, make more money. You get to spend less time, all of those things. But that's not the ambition. The ambition is to keep them poor and keep them taking the bus. All right, let's see. There have been persistent inequities in transportation spending. I know. I mean, there's been a lot of money spent, wasted on public transportation. Tons. They could have expanded the highways. They could have broadened the highways. They could have much easier to get around. Instead, they build these public transportation systems that actually inhibit our ability. And they cost a fortune. They should use Elon Musk's tunneling technology. That'll do it. There's another, by the way, $213 billion. $213 billion focused on housing, which is necessary and long overdue priority of low-income and disadvantaged communities that have long suffered housing inequity and injustice in America. See, the problem with low-income housing is not money. The problem with low-income housing is not in my backyard. The problem with low-income housing is zoning. The problem with low-income housing is housing standards that are not allow the building of low-income housing. Every time low-income housing is proposed in a town, in a city, in a place, oh no, the residents don't want low-income housing near them. They say communities of color in formerly red-line neighborhoods now experience rates of chronic disease, shorter lifespans, and greater risk factors of COVID-19 due to poor housing quality. Is it due to poor housing quality? Due to other lifestyle issues? Due to diet? Housing, homelessness, due in part to historic discriminatory housing policy and planning? No. Homelessness is due to zoning, housing regulations, cost of building low-income housing. I have not been to Melbourne. Not been to Melbourne. I've been to Sydney. I have not been to Melbourne. All right, we can go on and on. Another $20 billion that focused on reconnecting communities that are being divided and disjointed by highway construction. Of course, highways disrupt communities. They run through them. And land is cheaper in low-income neighborhoods. It's easier to build a highway there. But there's no way around these issues. There's always going to be somebody who's lower income than everybody else. And if moving out of those neighborhoods is possible and becomes possible as people in those neighborhoods become richer. And the whole focus should be, the singular focus should be, of getting poor people who have ambition to have the opportunities to become rich. That's it. Get people, give people the opportunities. You don't have to give them. Free up the opportunities so that people can become richer. The whole focus when it comes to poverty, should be on how do we create an environment, and it's easy to create such an environment, where people, and a culture, which is harder, an environment and a culture which promotes wealth creation. That's it. And that means having a culture that is anti-crime doesn't help when you're burning down buildings and rioting in the street. That doesn't encourage an anti-crime culture. It means not playing the victim card. It means taking responsibility for your own life. And it means the government needs to get out of the way. There are, in places like Chicago, in the west side of Chicago, and the south of Chicago, where people are unbelievably poor, the amount of regulations and controls the government has for somebody to open a business, it takes months and months and months. Get the government out of the way so people can open up businesses. Get the government out of the way so people can embrace new professions, to get them out of licensing and all of that stuff. Anything that holds people back, any kind of coercion that holds people back, get rid of it. And if you get rid of it, people can create wealth. People can rise out of poverty. Opportunities are created. And their world becomes a better world. You don't need any equity infrastructure. Yeah, privatize the schools. Thank you, Diego. Absolutely. Privatize the schools. Or do education saving accounts. Right? Putting together a plan on how to eliminate poverty in America would be easy. Just get out of the way. Maybe have one generation of education saving accounts before you actually privatize the whole thing. Just get out of the way. I acknowledge that government is responsible to some extent for the lack of wealth accumulation in minority communities because of redlining. But that's 50 years ago. Enough. It's time now to take responsibility over your own life and go make something of yourself. It's hard, I know, it's not going to be easy. But what option is there? Wait around for handouts? Wait around for Biden to build infrastructure that will do away with systemic racism? Give me a break. All right. And look, the only way we get there, it's not by convincing people it works. People don't care if something works or doesn't, right? People have been rising out of poverty in China and India and all over Asia for the last 40 years because of more freedom. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Redlining in the 60s, 50 plus years ago, whatever. Nobody cares about examples. This is all driven by altruism and what the intellectuals here, what the leaders, what the congressmen, what the think tank leaders, what the leaders of the minority communities are doing are leveraging altruism to maintain their power, to increase their power, to redirect hundreds of billions of dollars to their cronies, who will then give them kickbacks and allow them to get rich. And this is the level of corruption here, philosophical, moral, and financial, is is very large. Let me use words I can actually pronounce. All right, let's go to the super chat. Whoa, there's a lot of them. I'll start with the easy ones. Have you ever eaten the reppers? Come on, actually, Christian. What kind of question is that? Of course I've eaten the reppers. Now, they indeed go against my diet. I'm not supposed to eat arepas. But a good arepa is worth the cheating. For arepas, cheating is sometimes worthwhile. Can't eat them all day. Can't eat them every day. But once in a while, they are fantastic. They're fantastic. Not part of my regular diet. No. Even if you proved it in Haiti, nobody cares. Altruism is too strong. Victimhood mentality is too strong. It's philosophical, the problem, not lack of examples. All right. Okay, so we're going to start with the $20 and above Super Chat questions. Even if you believe torture should take place in certain circumstances, should there be limits to what you can do to torture somebody? Say waterboarding is okay, but chopping off someone's testicles should never be allowed. Ugh, I don't know why. The only reason I'm talking about this topic is because somebody asked me to review the movie Unthinkable, because it's not a fun topic. But no, I mean, what's the difference? You're going to kill the person anyway, right? What's the difference? You can shoot him in the kneecap, but don't shoot him in the hip bone. I don't know. No, I mean, once you allow torture, it's the rule of force and the rule of barbarism in that sense, and it's anything goes. Now, what you need to do is be effective at it, and be good at it in terms of being effective and knowing what you're doing to get the information you need. And look, this should be the rarest of the rarest of the rarest of the rarest things ever. And certainly, domestically, it should basically never be done except in these crazy emergency situations that you can imagine, right? But they're crazy. They're one in a gazillion. And even in times of war, it's very rare and very unusual that this is something you would do. Most people break. Look, the other thing about torture is that people don't get is that most people break very quickly. Most people have very, very low tolerance for pain. See, in the movies, we always get a highly trained person in the CIA or Special Forces who has learned to endure and prepared himself for the torture like in Unthinkable. But in real life, almost nobody is prepared for torture. Almost everybody breaks in torture. Indeed, in Israel, the Mossad, the way the Mossad trains its spies was, you're going to break. You're going to give them the information. So either use the cyanide pill, or we accept the risk. But we know that if you're caught, you're going to give the information. I highly recommend the show Spy, which I think was on Netflix, about a true story about an Israeli spy in Syria. Excellent show with Sacha Baron Cohen playing a dramatic role. I mean, he's very good at it. He's very good in it. And yeah, I mean, he breaks, and the Israelis know he's going to break. So you overestimate the need for torture. That is, most people don't need to be tortured much. And, with drugs and truth serums and things like that, the portrayal in Unthinkable is a particular circumstances which basically never happens. Again, even the best trained people trained in torture, tend to break under torture. All right, people, you're getting me to talk about torture. We're at $280, $120. $120 would be good. $120 would be good. Alejandrina will be very sad if we don't make $400. Marathon Man, that's right, Marathon Man has that scene with the dental torture scene. That is that is spooky. Of course, there's a scene in 1984 with torture. It doesn't take that much to break somebody. Would the physical destruction of cash help or hurt the government? A devious billionaire would rather burn his dollars than pay a wealth tax, make a statement, versus would it just mean less dollars outstanding the Fed has on its books? No, I mean, it would make a statement. Whether that statement would resonate, whether that statement would actually mean anything, whether that statement would actually coalesce around anything, I don't know. Again, people would probably view it as an act of nihilism rather than as an act of principled opposition. So he would have to be able to make the case of why he's burning his cash. But there's no economic benefit. There's no benefit to the Fed of somebody burning his money, right? I wonder how you would do that in the electronic age. I know, can you delete your Bitcoin? crypto, can you destroy a Bitcoin? I don't know. I'm a legit question. I'm curious if you guys have any answers. All right, with the we just did that. Canada is crazy like France. Yes, in many respects it is. It has gotten much worse from the time Rand Paterson and Wilder Lane. Yes, that's what? That's a long time ago. You know, that's 70 years ago. There are many unknown influential Canadians involved in her movement. Do you think they feel they escaped our progressive creep? Whose movement? Rand's movement? Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of Canadians have escaped Canada, have left Canada because of how bad things have gotten. You know, I know at the Institute we employ a number of people who are former Canadians who moved to the United States and are very, very happy to have been able to escape the kind of socialist creep that has been happening in Canada. I mean, I will say this, from the perspective of government policy, particularly government physical policy, put aside healthcare, but Canada is far more responsible, has been at least before Trudeau, far more responsible than the U.S. government. The debt as a percent of GDP is far lower. The deficits they run are significantly lower. In almost every parameter, from the banking system in Canada is much healthier than the banking system is in the United States, and in a sense less regulated, and has been historically. So Canada, and this is why Canada has survived, right? Why it's done okay in spite of the insanity. But Canada economically has not done that bad, right? But yes, Leonard Peikoff, John Ridpath, from the younger generation, Onkar Ghate, Keith Lockitch, all came from Canada. And you know, I'm sure there are many others that I've forgotten their names or forgotten that they are Canadian in origin. But Canada has been a significant source of intellectuals for objectivism. Landon says that you can password protect a Bitcoin, and then I guess burn the password, forget the password, and then nobody can access the Bitcoin, so it's as if it's burnt. Is that right? I don't think Ben Baer is from Canada. No, I don't think so. What would be something that could actually happen that would have the biggest influential impact on changing the culture? Ooh. So something not in terms of ideas, but something that would happen out there in the world that would have a huge impact on the culture. C. Bradley Thompson is Canadian. That's right, Jeremy. Good catch. I knew I'd forgotten some people. Yeah, I'm not going to mention some of the other people being mentioned. I don't know. That's a good question. What would something that could actually happen that would have the biggest influence impacting on changing the culture? Yeah, here's one. Imagine that in 20 years, the billionaires. No, I don't think a good Atlas Shrugged movie would be enough. Imagine in 20 years, the billionaires, the Mike Zuckerbergs, that kind of level people, are objectivists. Are known to be objectivists, are proud to be objectivists, are willing to state that they're objectivists. Imagine if objectivists, you guys out there, become incredibly successful in the culture. Imagine the 10, 100 John Allisons, not just running one bank, but running a bank and running a technology company and running. But and talk about it, and are proud of it, and express the values they got out of Ayn Rand. Imagine, I think this is an example Harry Binswain gives, that a Nobel Prize winner in physics says, "Yep, Ayn Rand's epistemology. That's how I got where I got." that is what will change the culture. If we, I can't say we produce because that's weird. That's like very collectivist. But if out of our community, we have a significant number of successful people who are openly objectivist, and they can become openly objectivist after they become successful, that's fine. Now, today we have a handful. But even the ones that we have, many of them don't want to declare themselves objectivists, don't want to talk about it, don't want to make a big deal of it because the cost is too large. But imagine if there were 20 of them, I don't think the cost would be large anymore because they would have weight. So I think it's the number of culturally successful, right? Culturally successful people. Jelani asks, do you know Lex Friedman? He brings up Ayn Rand a lot. Check him out. Yeah, I mean, Lex interviewed me. If you go to Lex's channel, you will find a 3-hour interview with me. So obviously, I know Lex Friedman. So yes, I was on his podcast, a 3-hour interview. And I'm flying to Austin tomorrow. And really the only reason I'm flying to Austin, other than I like Austin, but the only reason I'm flying to Austin is to do another interview with Lex Friedman, which I'll be seeing Lex, not tomorrow I'm flying, Wednesday. And this time, he said, block out 3 to 5 hours. So we might have a 5-hour interview, discussion. There might be somebody else there. We'll see. I'll let you know how it goes after the fact. No trains from Puerto Rico to Austin, Texas. I have to add to climate change, to polluting the world by flying through Miami to Austin, Texas. So we will be, and actually, Jelani, Lex sometimes listens to the show and actually has been on the comment section of the show, I think once. Wait, somebody says Michael Malice might be there too. He might be. He just might be. Now, how much are you guys willing to pay to have Michael Malice on Lex Friedman's show and for me, Michael, and Lex to talk for 5 hours? Well, we're short about $100 to make it to 400, but $100, maybe that'll do it. Maybe that'll get Malice and me and Lex to sit down and hash out, well, some of Michael's misunderstandings about Ayn Rand. Yeah, well. All right, let's see. There's $50. There we go. Stefan Petit says, just wanted to say that I think your open love of Beethoven is important for young Ayn Rand readers to hear. I guess because she didn't like Beethoven and I do, and the fact that we can disagree about something like that. Also, you're wanting to get people to think in more nuanced way is inspiring. And people's lack of nuanced thinking is a major problem. It very much is. And I find it very scary out there that there's so much. All right, Jeff, thank you. Jeff from Canada. New background. You won't get the odds. That's the only thing I wonder about the green screen background is the art won't be there. Now, I'll be able to flash other pieces of art on there if I want, because it's a green screen. I can put anything I want on there. But I think you're going to miss David and where is he? Beethoven and the paintings, Vermeer. And all right, look, now the dollar's just flowing. I think this is to make Alejandrina feel good. This is great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Daniel. I'll get you a question in a second. We're going to do this in the order I received the $20 and above questions. Okay, let's see what the next one is. And there's Scott now. Where do you think the shutting down? Where do you think the shutting down will end? What will be the turning point? If not France with airlines, then what? You mean the shutting down because of climate change? I don't know. I don't see a big event. I mean, the thing that the statists love about COVID is that it's this invisible thing that's scary and that it's transmitted from human to human, so they can find this excuse to put us in isolation, to lock us down. What are they going to do with regard to climate change? How are they going to get us to actually shut ourselves down and to stop? I don't know. Maybe it's some weather catastrophe, but we're so well protected against the weather. I can't see a catastrophe actually happen. I mean, even Katrina, this massive storm that was so badly managed and badly dealt with, didn't kill that many people in the big historical scope of things. So I just don't know. My view still is that as soon as it really starts hitting people in a significant way, in a way they can really see their lifestyle, their wallet, things like that, they will rebel against it. So I think it's likely to be slow. It's likely to be cut down on certain airplane routes, and then the shutting down of certain train routes. And some villages and small towns will die because you can't get there anymore. And the shutting down of certain industries. And there not being enough electricity, so certain things start getting shut down because there's not enough electricity. And then at that point, the question is, will people rebel against it? Will people start demanding fossil fuels? I mean, it's happening in Germany, but you see what happened in Germany, and this is the kind of the example I'm going with, is energy prices started going through the roof. They started shutting down all their nuclear power plants, all their coal power plants, and shifting to wind and solar. And it's Germany. Solar in Germany, it's just insanity, right? Maybe in Puerto Rico, but in Germany, solar. And electricity prices started spiking, and there were shortages. So people demanded action. So the action was to restart the coal power plants. So Germany has actually seen a spike in CO2 emissions because they restarted their old coal power plants. They didn't go to natural gas. They went up because those take years to build. They restarted the old coal plants. It's much easier to restart a coal plant than it is to restart a nuclear plant. So you see, the backlash forced the government to withdraw its worst. But is that sustainable? Will that continue? I think certainly in America, you're not going to see anytime soon major shutdowns because I don't think people are quite ready to tolerate. Now, given all that, COVID suggests, well, if you couch it in the right way and you do it in the right way, maybe you can get away with it. So we'll see. We'll see how emboldened these countries are, these authoritarians are from COVID. What are some guideposts that would indicate Rand ARI are changing the culture? Have we met some already? Looking for optimism, but don't BS me, please. Yeah, I mean, I think we already have some guideposts, no question. I mean, I've said often that I don't think Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher would have been electable without Ayn Rand and probably Milton Friedman and maybe Hayek in England. I think that they made the culture open to those ideas, and I think those influences are still around. I think capitalism is not a completely dirty word still because of Ayn Rand, but also because of people Ayn Rand influenced. And many of the people Ayn Rand influenced, as I've said before, are not objectivists. They might be economists. They might be free market economists. They might be businessmen. The first generation of Silicon Valley was mostly influenced by Ayn Rand. From Steve Jobs to Michael Dell to Larry Ellison to Sam McNeely, all of them read and loved Ayn Rand, and she inspired them. And a lot of Fortune S&P 500 companies were inspired by Ayn Rand. A lot of CEOs. So that's a beginning. That's a signpost. The fact that Paul Krugman attacks her all the time. The fact that the left, I mean, I've got a Google alert thing on Ayn Rand. And the number of articles constantly, nonstop attacking her is a guidepost. Right? First they ignore you. Then they attack you. Then they pretend they agree with you without knowing what they're agreeing with. and then they buy into it. That's the process. We're definitely in the attack phase, not in the ignoring phase. And to some extent, if you look at the right, we're at the point of, oh, we agree with you, knowing that Ayn Rand is the only one who has any intellectual substance. But they don't. They're misusing her, right? And I see that all the time, right? But there are more congressmen, there are more senators, there are more people in politics and in political machinery than ever before who claim they love Atlas Shrugged. They don't get it, they don't understand it, but they claim it. So those are the kind of guideposts. The guideposts for the future are more and better. Businessmen who not just say they were inspired by Ayn Rand, but that Ayn Rand shaped the way they did business and made it possible for them to be successful and to be happy human beings, like what John Allison used to do when he was CEO of BB&T, and still does. So the same with scientists, the same with other people in the culture, what I said before. Those would be guideposts. People are suddenly popping up in influential places who you didn't know, who have said, yep, Ayn Rand really had an impact on my life, and I'm a much better person for that. Right? Ted Cruz did read from Atlas Shrugged as part of a filibuster in the Senate. And that's what I mean by they want to claim her as their own, even though they have no clue. Even though they have no clue. So you will see it among leaders in the culture, including academics at some point, but academia might be one of the last places. Authors will start citing Ayn Rand's influence on their thinking, right? Like the guy who wrote The Cave in the Light has a nice couple of paragraphs on Ayn Rand without agreeing with them, but just she was part of this idea of Plato versus Aristotle as guiding through history. More books like that don't, are not just on Ayn Rand, but are influenced by Ayn Rand and then deal with topics. Again, more intellectuals, more business leaders, more scientists, more cultural voices that are influenced. And then politics will be the last thing. Politics will be the last thing. Right? More 2112 by Rush. Yeah, more musicians who claim to be influenced by Ayn Rand. By her lyrics, by her sense of life, by her passion, by her life. Yeah. And then ultimately, yeah, movies and sculpture and painting and everything. Right? We need romantic art more broadly. Yes, we are past 400. I think we're at 400 and something, 420, 430, $442.52. So thank you, everybody, for getting us over 400. That is awesome. Thank you particularly to Jeff and Stephen, who got us there pretty quickly once we hit 300. And thank you to all the people who asked Super Chat questions. Okay, now we've got the lower cost. Wow, we're already at an hour 40. Okay, and I've got a lot of Super Chat. Oh, Stephen just dropped a whole bunch of money. Thank you, Stephen. That's really, really amazing. All right, so this is an Atlas Shrugged spoiler alert. So if you haven't read Atlas Shrugged, cover your ears. On my second read, I had the same thought, that the John Galt rescue wraps up the novel very quickly, almost too quickly. But then I think there's a line about how safe and efficient such an undertaking would be by men of the mind. Is that the point? Yes, the point is not to present you with a formula for the improving the world. Remember that the plot of the novel is not primarily about the world. The plot of the novel is primarily about Dagny, Reardon, Francisco Galt. And that is all resolved. There's nothing else to say. Once she, spoilers here. Once she goes with Galt, the novel is done. It's resolved. Everything else that's going on in the world, we've said everything there is to say about that. Right? Now, yes, all of us would like, but how do they rebuild? How does it all end? How do we bring sanity to the world? But that's not what Ayn Rand is geared at this point. Her answer to that is philosophy. Her answer to that is Galt's speech. She's told you already what the solution is. Embrace these ideas. How do they do that when they go back? The particulars of rebuilding, that's not a novel. That is a nonfiction book about how to rebuild a culture once it's destroyed. So it has to end where it ends. From a plot, from an aesthetic, for romantic literature perspective. I hope that answers your question, Stephen. Okay, do you believe today's cancel culture can be compared to Newspeak from 1984? I mean, you can compare it, but no. I mean, partially because being canceled in 1984 was basically to be imprisoned and eaten by rats, right? I mean, it was tortured. Cancel culture does not involve torture yet. It's horrible, it's unpleasant, but it still involves the corporation, voluntary corporation of people. Cancel culture only works to the extent that people sanction it. Cancel culture can easily be fought if people are willing to stand up to the idiots who engage in it. So there was a way to deal with it, whereas in 1984 it's a dead end, and the book doesn't give you a way out. Because you're being canceled by people with guns. So I think the Newspeak from 1984 is much worse. Now, epistemologically, in terms of how they use words, yeah, there are a lot of similarities. Things like anti-racism, the way they use anti-racism and critical race theory is Newspeak. Because anti-racism is racism. There was a question relating to racism here. Let me just look and see if I can find it. Shouldn't we be using the word bigotry or collectivism instead of racism? Racism suggests one believes in superiority and inferiority of a race. No. Racism is about judging somebody based on his race. Whether that means judging them as inferior or superior, that is still racism. It's judging, it's using race as a basis for judgment, as a basis for evaluation. Positive or negative. That's racism. So, and that by, implicitly assumes a inferior and superior race. I mean, all the white nationalists who claim, oh, no, we don't think we're better, we just want our own space, they're lying to you. Of course they think they're better. That's why they talk about nonstop about IQs and all kinds of stuff like that. So, no, racism is the right term because it's a form of collectivism. It's a form of identifying. It's a form of identifying yourself with a particular collective based on what? Based on race, based on color skin. So racism is a form of collectivism. Bigotry, I'd have to look it up, and it doesn't seem like bigotry is strong enough. All right, back to the list. Do you believe stuff happens in cycles where issues, incidents, ebb and flows? Yeah, there's a sense in which they do. There's a sense in which things get really bad and then people rebel against those things. So we get slightly better. That's Ronald Reagan rebelling against kind of the nuttiness of the 60s and 70s. And then you get Ronald Reagan and you get a swing to the right and a swing to a little bit, things are being a little bit better. And then at some point, it's just a swing. There's no fundamental change. And that swing peaks and it goes backwards. And clearly we're in the midst of going backwards. And I just don't see any swings to the right, positive swings to the right. We might get the negative swings to the right, to the bad right. So yes, there's a sense in which it happens. But I would note that every time the pendulum swings, it'll swing further out to the bad side, further out to the collectivist side. And when it swings to the more individualistic side, it'll be shallower. And then, so the swing is constantly moving on the spectrum towards more and more collectivism, unless you challenge the basic fundamentals, the basic mechanisms of the swing. If machines can never have free will, how come the best chess software program can beat the best human chess player? Because chess doesn't require free will. And the machine is not thinking. The machine is just solving a mathematical equation. A mathematical equation that's very sophisticated, is very difficult, It's an algorithm. Chess is just algorithmic. It's every move. There are, let's say, 1 billion different options with, given the potential responses, right? There are 1 billion different outcomes to each move. A computer is much better at those kind of computations than the human brain is. Indeed, the human brain is not very good in those kind of computations. That's why a computer beat a chess player. Not because the computer could think, not because the computer could have free will, but because the computer can compute faster and deal with more numbers, more scenarios, more possibilities than the human brain was. Again, computers compute. Human brains do a lot more than compute. They think. They evaluate. They integrate. They put things together in new ways. All you do in chess is iterate. If I do this, what are all the options he's respond? What are my options to all his options? That's just computation. Now, it's hard computation. The algorithm is sophisticated and very difficult to do, and you need a supercomputer in order to do it. But it's all just math. Human thinking is not just all math. Why no Super Chat matches lately? That's how you excite us. Also got my brother to read both Atlas and Fountainhead, and he really liked them, and is going to look into the philosophy one mind at a time. Absolutely excellent. That's great. Well, to do a match, I need somebody to match, right? And I do have somebody who's willing to match $1,000. I've been waiting to see if we can build up the audience. So our live audience has not been as large as it was, let's say, last year and in January. February, March, April have seen a decline in the number of people listening to Show Live. I wanted to see if this month I could get that number up, maybe by having more news-related topics. So the numbers are getting better. They're getting closer to 150. So I'm going to do a $1,000 matched show next week. And I hope you all show up, and I hope you get people excited about joining. I'll give you the exact date and everything, probably on the weekend. I'll tell you exactly when it's going to be, and bring your friends, bring your cousins, bring your relatives, and we will do a $1,000 match. But to do the match shows, I have to do, somebody has to match the money, and there just haven't been as many people. I think a lot of people did spend a lot of money on the Yaron Brook Show towards the end of last year, and maybe they're cashed out. All right, I heard sales of Atlas shot up 50% on Amazon the week of Prager University video. Does that belly your Ruben Shapiro anecdote about where to find new fans? Well, I don't know how anybody knows that literally sales of Atlas shot up 50% on Amazon. What you get on Amazon are the ratings. I don't know where you get the sales figure. Maybe that's true. I don't know. Amazon obviously knows, and the publisher would know, but I don't know that. But let's say that's true. Do we know how much sales went up after the Rubin show and after the Shapiro show and after the Lex Friedman show? I don't, because I don't have access to those numbers, so I don't know. I could check. Sales of Atlas Shrugged shot up after the Atlas Shrugged movie, even though it was awful. Does that mean we should make more awful Atlas Shrugged movies? I just don't know what you make of that. What you make of that? All I'd say is the question is not how many people read Atlas Shrugged, because millions of people read Atlas Shrugged. It's how many people take the idea seriously and actually get engaged in the movement, and how many of them become serious about it over time. How many of them let that book really have an impact on their lives? That's the standard. Again, from my experience, you get more bang for the buck. I got more bang for the buck from Rubin than I did from Shapiro. I get more bang for the buck from center left than I do from religious right. And I think, maybe I could go back and get the statistics on Atlas Shrugged sales after a Rubin show. I probably can. I'll ask. I'll report back. But look, it's fine if I'm wrong. I have no problem being wrong. If being wrong means that somebody else's strategy to get people to read Atlas Shrugged is better than mine, great. More people read Atlas Shrugged. So I don't know if it turns out that we should go full steam ahead on religious conservatives, and you can show me proof that that's where we should go to get our... And those religious conservatives, after they read Atlas Shrugged, become atheists and are likely to become objectivists, then I'll be the first one to advocate that we should go after religious conservatives. Haven't seen the proof yet. And again, 50% reading, 50% increase, if it's true, increase in buying Atlas Shrugged on Amazon, is not yet enough evidence. I want to see more evidence. Tucker Carlson seems to be arguing, oh no, this is a $20 one. Let me do the $20 one. I meant to write on your show on Heroes that when I was a kid, I thought Marty McFly was very heroic. He stood up to bullies. You've mentioned that Back to the Future is, of course, terrific. Any further thoughts? Yeah, I mean, McFly is not only stands up to bullies, he's courageous, he's constantly thinking, he's a problem solver. It's a movie that has a lot of respect for science and for technology. I think time travel movies are always problematic. There's no way out of it. They create these paradoxes they can't really escape. So you have to ignore that. I'm always suspicious of time travel movies. But Back to the Future is fun. It's interesting. And again, he's a thinker. And he's brave. He's courageous. So, yes, I like Back to the Future, and I like the character of Marty. Tucker Carlson seems to be arguing that we have to give that we have to give the people fascism, nationalism, or we're going to end up with communism. That's what all the fascists always say, which is what many German intellectuals argued during the Weimar Republic. Exactly. It's exactly what they argued, and it's not just Tucker. I know people who claim to be objectivists who argue that. I know, it's what BAP argues. It's what the Catholic tradcons, traditional conservatives, argue. It's what the back porch, Now, they don't name fascism, but that's what they're arguing for. They don't name it that because it has negative connotations, but that's what they're arguing for. You're absolutely right, and it absolutely parallels the Weimar Republic, and I'm absolutely convinced that America will never be communist, but it's much more likely to be fascist. In putting people in jail for not paying child support, a rights violation. So let's ask this a different way. Is putting people in jail for not living up to their contract? Let's say I have a contract with you, a rental contract, and I refuse to leave the apartment after our contract is up, and I stay. Should I be put in jail? Yeah. If we have a contract that says you're going to give me X and I'm going to give you Y, and I refuse to give you Y, should I be forced to give you Y? Yes. Is that a violation of rights? No. If child support is part of the marriage contract, which I think it is, there's a clearly in the law and clearly, I think, implicit in the agreement of marriage is that you will support the child. Now, how and by how much and all of that, I'm not saying the court's objective about this. They're far from it. But the principle, we're talking about the principle. Then, yeah, if you violate the contract, then putting you in jail is not a violation of rights. Now, we could argue that the courts are not abiding by those contracts correctly, and then that's the violation of rights. And I'm open to that argument, that the courts are too pro-woman. I also have heard from divorced couples that the courts are too pro-men. It depends on the state. It depends on the judge. It depends on the circumstances. Courts, unfortunately, are nowhere near as objective as they should be. You mentioned Atlas being a bestseller of sorts in Ukraine. No, it was a bestseller. #1 book in the country. Do you have a source for this stat? I Googled out of curiosity and came up empty. Does ARI publish global sales figures by country? My only source is that's what I was told in Ukraine at the time by Ukrainians who I assume knew what they were talking about. So I have no written source. I assume the only source you would find is in a Ukrainian newspaper that tracks bestsellers from the 2015-2016 period. That's what I was told. It was so much of a bestseller that you know how our bestsellers land up being sold by Costco or being like in the supermarket everywhere. That's what was happening in Ukraine. You could walk into a supermarket and right there in the bin at the checkout was a copy of Atlas Shrugged. It was published in 3 volumes, and I think it was the 3rd volume that was the best-selling book in Ukraine. So that is I was told that. So I guess it has an asterisk footnote based on what people in Ukraine told me at the time. All right, the majority of the population will never be fully nihilistic, but what the majority can become is docile to the point where nihilists can take over and unleash their destruction. True, very true. But there's always going to be a backlash to that. That is, anarchy, nihilism are not stable. They're not sustainable. And while people will become docile, the likely outcome of that is the strong, those with the will, those who are willing to engage in it, will use that period of nihilism and the fact that people are docile to take them over and establish a fascist, put aside fascist, totalitarian regime. So any way you look at it, it leads to authoritarianism. Would it be moral to educate the uninitiated via subliminal messages, i.e. the philosophy of objectives and to save the world? It's not possible. You can't educate people of abstract ideas through subliminal messages. You can only, to some extent, manipulate their emotions and maybe manipulate their concrete associations. But you cannot reach abstract ideas through subliminal messages. You have to be conscious for abstraction. A lot of people want your favorite restaurant spots around the world. Can we put it in the newsletter? Sure, yes. So we can start a list of Iran's favorite restaurants. I think I have an app that has a lot of those restaurants listed by location, and you can ask me about them. So, Christian, just remind me, and I'll start sending you lists. A deeply ingrained obstacle to integrating the morality of selfishness is selfishness is associated with brutishness. Yes, one of the things we have to do is disassociate brutishness from egoism, from selfishness. It's bizarre to see rich liberal kids rioting and getting hysterical over the death of a homeless criminal whom they would never have anything to do with in real life. What's really going on here? They're nihilists. It's just an opportunity to burn stuff, and not all of them are rich liberal kids. Most of them are from the neighborhood. Most of them are just angry. But it's nihilism. It's an excuse to destroy. It's an excuse to burn things down. There's no conspiracy. Nobody's paying them. There's nothing going on in the background. It's just, hey, let's use our anger, even if it's superficial or even if it's made up, to stop destroying stuff. This will be fun. Would you say Keynesian economics have done harm? And if so, how much? I've run into a lot of people who swear by it. Also, any suggestions for counter-arguments? That's a big topic, and I've talked a lot about Keynesian economics in the past. I'm not going to do it now, 2 hours into the show. I'll just say Keynesian economics has done massive harm. Massive. From sustaining the Great Depression to causing the Great Recession, the Great Inflation, to causing stagnation in the 1970s, to causing poverty in the United States. It's awful. Keynesianism is awful, incredibly damaging, incredibly harmful and hurtful. You can read counter-arguments by Hayek. You can read counter-arguments by von Mises. You can read counter-arguments by Milton Friedman. They all have excellent counter-arguments, particularly Mises and Hayek on the economic issues. And there's no shortage of people who've written books, Henry Hazlitt, who've written books countering Keynesianism. I mean, famously, there's even a rap video, 2 rap videos of Keynes versus Hayek. And actually, even in those videos, Hayek makes some good points. Why a thought? Are we starting a war on wealth? Yeah, we've been engaging in a war on wealth for a long time. For a long time, and the war on wealth is not going away. A war on wealth, yes, a war on wealth in the hands of individuals. I'm in San Francisco. I need a restaurant recommendation fit for an individual who values a delicious life. San Francisco has so many great restaurants. The problem is, I'm terrible with names, and I don't have my phone on me. Email me, and I'll give you a restaurant recommendation in San Francisco. Remember that my recommendations are going to be expensive. Yeah, Saison. Somebody reminded me, Saison is an excellent restaurant in San Francisco. I really enjoyed I think I've had a meal once there, and it was excellent, brilliant. But it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you, particularly in San Francisco. But any great restaurant is going to cost you outside of Puerto Rico. Let's see. You admit the cost is too much for billionaires to come out as objectivists right now. Can't you see that even they need moral bravery against cancel culture? Yes, of course they do. We all need moral bravery against cancel culture. I don't know why. Why can't you see that even they? I don't understand why you think. I don't understand what your view is of my view of cancel culture. We all need moral bravery against cancel culture. Cancel culture is terrible. Okay. Stand your ground. Have some integrity. You need to have, but I guess what you're saying is I should devote my entire show, every show, to talking about cancel culture. Other people are doing that. What do you need it from me? They need it from ARI, absolutely. And ARI is providing the only moral bravery they can have against cancel culture is objectivism. It's talking about integrity and talking about morality and talking about these things. But if you talk all the time about cancel culture, you become meaningless, particularly when Ayn Rand provides us with a philosophy, not just one issue. So cancel culture is one symptom of the great irrationality, the great anti-reason mentality, and the impact of altruism. And that's what ARI, and that's what I'm fighting all the time. We're fighting against unreason, we're fighting against mysticism, and we're fighting against subjectivism. We're fighting against, in that sense, we're fighting against we're giving the intellectual ammunition to fight against the the postmoderns of all forms and all kinds. We're fighting against the irrationality of the left. We're fighting against the irrationality of the right. So we're fighting against irrationality. We're fighting against altruism by advocating for egoism. What else do you need? That's exactly what you need. To become a monolithic about one issue would be a massive mistake and an underappreciation of where this issue is coming from. It's coming from a certain philosophical foundation, which is what I, and ARI, as separate beings, are all about. All about. Pre-pandemic, did you ever see live theater plays, or have you given up seeing something inspiring via that media? No, I love live theater. I've seen, I love Shakespeare. I love seeing Shakespeare, so I used to go to see Shakespeare. I saw Hamilton, the musical. I actually saw that twice, once in LA, once here in Puerto Rico. And once in a while when they show I've been to the Shakespeare Festival up in Oregon a few times. I love that. In Ashland, Oregon, which I love. And I particularly like what you'd call classical theater, Shakespeare and 19th century plays. But the modern stuff is okay. Some of it's good. I like Ayn Rand, like Terence Rattigan. So I've seen some Terence Rattigan in London. I like to go to theater in London. Haven't been to a lot of theater in New York. Although I'd like to go more. But yeah, I think it's all. I love theater. Yeah, I haven't given up. Don't give up on art. There's always good stuff somewhere. There's always good stuff hiding away there, and you got to go find it. But it's your values, so you go pursue your values. All right, 2 hours and 5 minutes. Thanks, guys. You've been very generous. We made $635 today. That's fantastic. Thank you to all the Super Chat supporters. Thank you to all the monthly supporters. You can become a monthly supporter at YourOnBookShow.com/support or Patreon or Subscribe Store or Locals. And, of course, thank you for all those who gave it a thumbs up. Please don't forget to like the show before you leave. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. I'll be back. I'm in Austin. I fly to Austin tomorrow. I'll be there Wednesday and Thursday. I'll be back Friday. I might do a show Friday. Definitely Saturday and Sunday. I will see you on, I will see you over the weekend.